We'd like to begin in a second. If everybody could take their seats, please mute your phones. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the 2025 Distinguished Faculty Awards Ceremony. My name is Bill Tierney, a Hobart alum from the class of 1990, here for my 35th, along with my 2020 William Smith grad. I also serve as the co-chair of the Distinguished Faculty Award Committee, along with the brains of our operation, Melissa Fasolo-Gorsinski, from the class of 98. Last reunion, we had the honor of recognizing the late Professor Emerita of Physical Education, Mary Ellen Hosking, and Professor Emeritus of Economics, Alan Frischman. I said that correctly, this ceremony. Today, I might stand before you as we prepare to celebrate the late Professor Emeritus of English, Peter Cummings, and Professor Emeritus of Education, John Burns. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the other members who worked very hard at putting this year's ceremony together. Terry Smith from the class of 1980, who's with us. Lawrence Moultrie from the class of 04. Josephina Rego from the class of 2011. Maxwell Potter from the class of 2014. Ariel Trent from 2014. And Audrey Platt from the class of 2021. We're also joined this afternoon by the following past recipients of the Distinguished Faculty Award: Professor Emeritus Joe DeGangi, Alan Frischman, Jim Spates, Pat McGuire. Please all stand to be recognized.
Hi, I'm Melissa Fasolo-Gorsinski, class of 98 and parent of 26, one of the co-chairs. The Distinguished Faculty Award was established in 1990 by Hobart Alumni Association and the William Smith Alumni Association. The joint award of the associations recognizes the importance that graduates of Hobart and William Smith place on the contributions of outstanding faculty members of the past for their impact as teachers, mentors, and scholars. Nominations for the award are sought by all alumni and alumni and are professors who have retired or have moved on from Hobart and William Smith for more than 5 years or are deceased. One of the original committee members noted, "It is our way of recognizing and honoring those who are our mentors, who molded us and nurtured us during our intellectual awakening, who taught us our limits and challenged our capabilities, and who inspired the best in us." More than anything else during our college years, outstanding teachers made the experience so valuable, and we recognize these professors as worthy of particular distinction and honor. Our two recipients today not only had an outstanding number of nominations from the alum community, but there were also deeply moving stories and anecdotes about the impact they had on the lives of their students. I'd like to now introduce Paul McNeil, who will then be followed by Joshua Lappin. Paul is a 05 alum, and Josh is from class of 96. They will share with us their reflections of the late Professor Emeritus Peter Cummings, who devoted himself for 38 years to Hobart and William Smith's English department. Paul?
Oh, it's right here. You guys are so organized. This is emotional. Whew. I was driving in about 20 minutes ago from Western Massachusetts, and as soon as I came around that corner, I just started crying. 20 years ago. So it's hard to find. Sorry, it's gonna take me a little bit. It's really hard. Peter Cummings meant everything to me, and so did John Burns. So it's like this double event for me. It's hard to find just the right words to honor a person who taught you how to find meaning and beauty and power in every word. But I'll try, because that's what Professor Cummings would have encouraged me to do. Step forward, speak with care, trust that language, when shaped with heart, can carry the weight of anything. I'd studied Shakespeare with Professor Cummings for 5 semesters. 5 semesters of diving headlong into the music, the madness, the mercy, and the miracle of Shakespeare's writing. Professor Cummings, I don't want to call him Peter because I just always respected him with Professor. Professor Cummings wasn't just a brilliant professor, he was a beautiful soul. I remember I invited him and all my professors my sophomore fall to a spaghetti dinner. And I thought this was a fun way to have like community, and everybody showed up. And that was problematic because I did not make enough spaghetti. But he just held the room, he held court, and I was so glad I invited him. He was someone who knew that literature wasn't just a subject, it was a way of living with more intensity, more empathy, and more imagination. He taught with fire. He used to tremble when he would tell us about certain Shakespearean works, and he was so passionate. But he also taught with gentleness. And that combination, passion and patience, changed the way I approach not just reading, but how I approach my work every day, how I approach parenting, and how I approach being a partner. I remember being asked by a friend to perform the role of King Richard in Richard III. For anyone who's read it, you know it's one of the most difficult roles Shakespeare ever wrote, and I was completely overwhelmed and out of my depth. I was really stressed out, and I didn't think I could pull it off. Professor Cummings did not hesitate. He knew I could do it, and that I had to do it. He worked with me tirelessly, not just line by line, but layer by layer, helping me see that I already carried Richard's emotional world within me, that I understood the language not just in my head, but in my gut, in my belly. He didn't just help me prepare a performance, he helped me step into my own power, my own confidence, and my own voice. My own version of Richard III, and we all have a little Richard III in us. Years later, when I was asked to speak at the Hobart Charter Day ceremony, I turned to Professor Cummings once again, and we talked about the word honor. Its roots, its resonance, its weight. He told me about its etymology, the Latin word annos, a physical mark, a ribbon, a pin, something to give someone worthy. Spending so much time in Professor Cummings' classrooms left me with a ribbon. Not a literal one, a mark I've carried with me ever since I left Geneva. A deep sense of belonging, of having been seen, challenged, and encouraged by someone who believed that words could shape not just plays, poems, or performances, but they could shape people. His death came far too soon. But Professor Cummings, he's never left me. Or any of the students that he touched. He's left us with whole libraries of knowledge, with curiosity echoing in every student that he taught. And for those of us lucky enough to have sat in his classroom, to have wrestled with Shakespeare under his guidance, to have felt that rare combination of rigorous intellect and open-hearted mentorship, we carry that ribbon. We are that ribbon. Thank you, Professor Cummings, for showing me what it means to read bravely, to teach joyfully. To find the humor in things big and small, and mostly to live with honor. That's all I have written, but I have a sonnet. I think he would have liked this. You haven't heard it yet. I tried iambic pentameter. That is hard. He taught us how to hear the soul in sound. He read with fire, yet touched the words, to read with fire, yet touched the words with grace. Through Shakespeare's depths, he led where truth is found, and lit the dark with kindness on his face. When Richard's crown felt too large to wear, he showed me I had known the role within. With patient hand, he walked me through despair, till voice met verse and strength grew from the skin. He shared honor, annos, a ribbon bright, bestowed with care, a mark not worn but earned. And though he vanished, vanished not his light. His lessons live in every line I've learned. This ribbon stitched in heart, not hem or sleeve, a teacher's gift to love, to shape, to leave. Thank you.
It's an honor to be here and to be chosen to speak on behalf of Professor Peter Cummings, a teacher whose influence shaped my academic journey in a very meaningful way. To explain just how meaningful that impact was, I'll need to tell you a bit about my own story, not out of self-importance, but because understanding my story will help illuminate the profound role Professor Cummings played in it. I'm the founder and the only employee of supertutors.com, a tutoring placement agency with a network of 200 teachers. As a student here in the 90s, I had many extracurriculars, but more relevant to today, I arrived here uncertain of a major, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher. That raised an obvious issue. If I was sure I wanted a life in education, I should probably figure out what subject I hoped to teach. There were a few other problems. My writing skills needed refining, and my reading speed lagged behind that of many of my peers. By Thanksgiving of 1992, I had a heart-to-heart with myself. A decision had to eventually be made, so a bet was placed on the idea that my greatest chance of academic growth would come from pursuing a subject that sparked curiosity, presented challenges, and prompted inspiration. Standing out in every class, earning the highest grades, frankly, that didn't matter to me. What mattered most was the possibility of consistent growth each trimester. The priorities were engagement and development. I knew I wanted to grapple meaningfully with complex texts and contribute thoughtfully to classroom discussions. Taking that step was daunting. Confidence was shaky, but it was a leap that I had to make. There would be bumps along the way. Sophomore year pledging comes to mind. But I understood where I was, and I knew what a liberal arts education meant. I couldn't have predicted every moment that would define my college experience, but I trusted with the right mindset, by the end of those 4 years, I would have found my version of success. By my third trimester, I was an English major, and shortly thereafter, I was an education minor and part of the teaching program. And yes, I did have Professor Burns, as well as Professor Cummings. I took models of teaching in the fall of 1994 and assessment and evaluation in the winter of 1995 with Professor Burns. So while I'm here today to honor Professor Cummings, I'm also here to thank and celebrate Professor Burns. Thank you, sir. Another key player in my success was a man named William Shakespeare, whom I first studied as a sophomore. However, it wasn't until my senior year that I had the privilege of enrolling in a Professor Cummings course. Like many students, I had to bank on being at the right end of registration. Every line to get into a Cummings class was long, and getting shut out was common. I tried multiple times. Finally, in the winter of my senior year, I was lucky enough to find a spot in Shakespeare tragedies. It didn't matter what category of Shakespeare I was reading, comedy, tragedy, or history. If you were in Professor Cummings' classroom, you were going to laugh a lot, and you were going to be challenged, inspired, and changed. He asked us to grapple with themes big and small, pay close attention to language and meaning, and open ourselves to the idea that studying Shakespeare was a privilege. Professor Cummings made it clear on day one. William Shakespeare is the greatest writer the English language has ever known. There's no need to debate it. Period. End of soliloquy. Sure, we could dive into all of the thank you, someone's clapping. Sure, we could dive into all the conspiracy theories claiming that Shakespeare didn't actually write his plays. No, Professor Cummings was adamant. William Shakespeare was the man. Also made clear on day one, Professor Cummings' style of Socratic method. This winter, he would eventually call on, without warning, each student in the class one at a time to analyze a certain passage. If anyone didn't like this style, they were welcome to let him know in advance. In that case, they would be scheduled to participate in the Socratic method on day 2. In front of the whole class, but speak now or be prepared to be called upon at random. I did not speak up. I had never taken the Cummings class. I needed at least a few weeks under my belt. About 2 weeks went by. I watched the veteran Cummings students like Paul cleverly navigate the Socratic method with ease, analyzing the text with confidence and nuance. Each class felt like a performance in itself, with Professor Cummings orchestrating the discussion. His deep command of Shakespeare wasn't just impressive. It was also charming and captivating. Every class, he revealed new layers of meaning. He made the complexity of the plays feel accessible. And he also convinced us that studying Shakespeare mattered. Then it happened. He called my name. We had just started Othello. I will never forget what happened next. Yes, I knew I would eventually be called upon, but I guess I was still not ready. I heard Professor Cummings call my name, and I literally jumped in my seat. And I actually blurted out, "What?" The entire class laughed, Professor Cummings included. He waited for the laughter to die down, and then he said, and I'll never forget the exact words, "It's okay. You're not sitting in a dentist chair." Room laughed again, but this time I laughed with them. My tension had broken, and I felt a little more grounded. Of course, I couldn't put his teaching strategy into words back then, but I can now. His expertise and his demeanor work hand in hand. He knew how to hold students accountable while creating an environment that was supportive. Then Professor Cummings directed me to the passage. I still have the book. Act 1, Scene 2, lines 62 through 81. You can still see my annotations from that day in 1996. Professor Cummings read the passage aloud, spoken by Brabantio. Just a few lines here. "O thou foul thief, where hast thou stowed my daughter? Damned as thou art, thou hast enchanted her. For I'll refer me to all things of sense, if she in chains of magic were not bound. Whether a maid so tender, fair, and happy, so opposite to marriage, that she shunned the wealthy, curled darlings of our nation, would have ever had to incur the general mark run from her guardage." So I read along. This was the most frightened I had been in my 4 years at the colleges. But somewhere in the fourth line, I got locked in. I'm pretty sure it was the chains of magic were not bound line. Something clicked. Suddenly before me, I saw a piece of a puzzle that needed solving. The language was complex. There were multiple meanings and devices. Slowly, like a picture coming into focus, the meaning revealed itself. Brabantio was confronting Othello with anger and prejudice for winning the love of his daughter Desdemona. The practicing on her with foul charms and abused her delicate youth. That means that Othello was being accused unfairly in obviously racist ways. If I look for alliteration later in the passage, it's probable and palpable. Assonance, thou, foul. It's an important moment because it helps reveal the major theme of racial and cultural tension. I look up. Professor Cummings, big smile. And it's followed by genuine words of praise. I absolutely nailed it, and it felt so good. I'm very, very, very lucky to have this moment. Reflecting on it as the years went by, I can point to it as the moment I won that bet I made with myself back in the fall of 1992. Throughout my time here, I experienced plenty of moments where I felt confident, where I knew I was part of something meaningful, but this one was different. Yes, it caught me off guard, and yes, it was funny, but more than that, it was the moment where I felt the biggest surge of academic confidence. Professor Cummings was such a passionate and masterful teacher, and I was usually caught up in his performance at the front of the room, so I guess I wasn't keeping track of how much I learned. Studying Shakespeare was indeed a privilege, and it was an even bigger privilege to be taught Shakespeare by Professor Cummings. This form of confidence stuck with me through 27 years of teaching. Teaching Shakespeare became one of my favorite parts of the job. I even became something of a Romeo and Juliet expert, at least by middle school standards. Each year I would map out my lessons, highlight the key passages, challenge my students to interpret the language, and celebrate with them when they cracked it, or if they came close to cracking it. And I mean this sincerely. I thought of Professor Cummings all the time. I always hoped in some small way that I was creating moments for my students like the one he created for me. I only had Professor Cummings for one class, Shakespeare Tragedies. I wish I had been with him for many, many more. And I know our relationship was not unique. I know I'm just one of hundreds who had the same transformative experience in his classroom. There is a final Professor Cummings moment that stayed with me as well. 4 months after Othello, I attended graduation. We were on the quad right in front of Cox Hall. The fog that morning had just lifted, and professors in their robes processed past us in a line. I watched them go by, and I tried to spot my favorites, some successfully and some not. And in the flurry, I looked over, and there he was, Professor Cummings, walking right at me. He spotted me before I spotted him. He had that same smile on his face. His hand was extended. He looked directly at me, shook my hand, and simply said, Congratulations, sir. It was just one class, one moment. He totally remembered me and he understood. And I never saw him again. But teaching like that, this is what teaching is like. It's a complicated, demanding job, but sometimes the most important moments are brief, a sentence, a question, an idea, a scene in a play. And it might stay with you for a long time, and it might make a really big difference. It brings me such great joy to be here today to tell this story and to help announce that the legacy of Professor Cummings lives on through this award. I'm honored to be a part of it. I'm profoundly thankful for the lasting imprint he made on me and so many students. And so now it's my turn to say to you, Professor Cummings, congratulations, sir. There are a few others who would like to say a few words, so I will call your attention to the screen.
I took probably every single Shakespeare class that was ever offered because of Professor Peter Cummings. You know, you see these professors in movies that are so animated and so passionate, and I was really lucky enough to have had that in real life, and it really made a tremendous impact.
I certainly remember his presence in class, his joy, his intellectual engagement. These were some of my best experiences at Hobart, and some things that I carried with me through my own life and career.
I'm so grateful to Peter Cummings and teachers and professors like him who made such a tremendous impact on me. I really couldn't have gotten to where I am today without that kind of passion and drive and support.
I recall Professor Cummings so fondly outside class as well. Discussions couldn't be just about his bike, his real presence on class. It's so great that we can honor him now, and so sad that we've lost him. As I said, I remember him very, very fondly.
I just want to say thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for the impact you had on my life and so many others. You deserve all the accolades and all the awards, and everyone has been lucky to know you, and I'm lucky enough to have been taught by you.
Here to accept the award on behalf of Professor Cummings is the daughter of Professor Cummings, Christine Cummings, class of 1992.
Wow, this is harder than I even thought it was going to be. Thank you so much. Turns out I'm actually the luckiest one because I got to be his daughter. He distinguished himself in many, many ways. Certainly now you all know as a teacher how passionate and committed he was. He was that way, however, in many, many other things in life. A lot of you may know that he was an avid cyclist, semi-pro. He raced here in America, but also in Denmark. He rode his bicycle from here to New Durham, New Hampshire. He rode his bicycle across Denmark, which is just about the same distance. It's a very small country. So a distinguished competitive athlete. He was also a triathlete. Professor Burns, so good to see you. This picture I showed to a friend of mine recently, and I was telling him about the other amazing things that my father did, including writing over 700 sonnets in iambic pentameter. And he said, "That beast wrote poetry?" Indeed he did. Also, he built 2 violins in Denmark, a violin and a viola. On his sabbaticals, after he and my mother were divorced and she had moved to Denmark, he would go to Denmark on his sabbaticals. He loved Denmark very much. He learned to speak Danish, not in any formal way, just with his usual Yeah, dedication and enthusiasm. He fell in love with my mother and wanted to, long story short, go back to Denmark and see her. So he got himself on a merchant ship, and for 3 weeks, a Danish merchant ship. When he got to port in Denmark, he spoke Danish, including a lot of salty sailor phrases. He could also draw. He drew this cartoon about Kazi's bar and restaurant. Yeah, somebody remembers it. So, a multi-talented man. I could go on, but I was asked to say a few short words. So I think I'll leave it at that. You guys did a remarkable job. And I will just read one of his 700 sonnets. I picked the one most apt. It's about June. When time comes round. When time comes round to 6 p.m. on a breezy porch in very early June, in upstate rain-rich, lush-leafed, hedge-thick maple green and willow calm, the jet-black dog and orange cat find out the patch of Grecian sun below the spider plant and Swedish ivy. These beautiful forms in interspecies play. They frolic with the puppy and the kitten in each other, nose around the grounds and turn, and then lie down with noses to the breeze. I swing and I go with the breeze. I read and the reading's good. I think, and the thought's no longer grim and mournful over loss. I feel a mood come on me now, a subtle sweet surrender, something permanent. When time comes round, it draws a line around a few essential things that never die and whispers, now, it is here and now and yours for all of time. Well, that's him. Lastly, another remarkable thing about him was that animals gravitated towards him. And I think those of us who knew him best can understand why. So thank you all. Thank you for this award.
Thank you, Christine. And thank you to our alumni speakers. It was perfect. So I would now like to invite Patrick M. Collins, Professor and Emeritus of Education, also parent 09 of Kathy, who Kathy was instrumental as well in helping me ensure our speakers. And then he will be followed by Lindsay Brown, class of 2005, to share some reflections on Professor John Burns. Pat?
Thank you all. I'm recovering from a little bit of a cold. I think I'll get through this. We'll give it a try. Well, John, by the time I arrived at these colleges, you were already a full professor. And I never had the opportunity to participate in a review of your work. So, I'll behave. When I was asked to make a few remarks about your impact on the HWS and Geneva communities, I jumped at the chance to finally complete my own review. This, John, is your review 4. Faculty will get that. Your legacy can best be measured by your impact on those you have worked with. In this case, that means your students, your colleagues in the education department, and many local school teachers, colleagues with whom you worked throughout your tenure at HWS. Cynthia Lindsay, who follows me, can best account for the perspective of your former students. I will focus on what departmental colleagues and local teachers have said about your work. In a moment, I'll let some of these colleagues speak for themselves, but first, just one bit of historical context. I know you will tell a slightly different story, John, but you are the father of teacher education as we still know it at HWS. In 1971, you were explicitly hired to design and build a teacher education program that was embedded in both the liberal arts and in meaningful work in schools. The voices below bear witness to the personal, professional, and institutional effects of your work and demonstrate why you've always been a distinguished member of the faculty. Now, this is an anonymous, highly edited sample of comments I've received in the last several weeks, but I will give you the entire review folder unedited before you leave today, okay? HWS education faculty, 5 or 6 comments. The first is from a current member of the department. Your commitment to a distinctive model of teacher education rooted in the liberal arts and grounded in equity, reflection, and deep care for learners has left an enduring legacy. Merritt Hall remains home base for educators who come here to learn, grow, and find purpose. Thank you, John, for the heart you gave this program and for the lasting impact you've made on all of us. Second, former colleague who's unable to be here today, short and sweet. He's a masterful and influential teacher who believes that having great ideas can open students to leading wonderful lives. A former member of the department who also was a local teacher before that, John. John was my #1 supporter. I was always impressed by his knowledge and his enthusiasm for teaching. A current member of the department, you modeled for me what service really looked like. I can still hear your voice advocating for students. You have this amazing way of communicating in a manner that balances advocating for specific priorities while doing it with kindness and generosity. Two more. Another former member of the department. When I think about John, I think about his uncompromising dedication and love for his family, his students, and his colleagues in the education department. I also think about the total trust I have in John, in his vision of educating future teachers, his personal and professional integrity, and his steady, effective leadership. And finally, one more former education department member who is also a former teacher, local teacher, and a former student before that. John and Midge were exceptional mentors, demonstrating a rigorous academic stance interlaced with respectful, interactive conversations. Positivity was a given. John's passion for an innovative, liberal arts-focused, field-based program was a driving force of its success. Those are HWS departmental colleagues. I've also got 4 local teachers, cooperating teachers we call them, with whom John worked closely over the years with our students, and they have always, because of John, been absolutely critical colleagues and partners in everything we do. And so I wanted to give voice to their perceptions of John. You're really in for it now, John, okay? 4 of them. First one. I had the privilege of working with so many of his student teachers over the years. He was always there to support, encourage, and instruct each student, as well as making me a partner in guiding them to a successful experience in my classroom. Second cooperating teacher, and I think these are all in Geneva, pretty sure. He had a wonderful way of counseling student teachers. Some needed to work on their discipline techniques. With others, it was on how to improve lessons. And Paul, you already commented on this. But mostly it was to congratulate them for the good job they were doing and build their self-esteem. In his criticism, he was always tactful and as kind as possible. There are themes emerging here across all of these. Third, local teacher. John was always there for both his student teacher and for the cooperating teacher. He always had a good rapport with his students. One could see that they respected his opinion and advice. He used compliments, but also gave important feedback on where improvements might be needed, and did so in a manner which they respected. Thank you, John, for your years of dedication to our teaching profession. Geneva children benefited greatly, and that's also critical in our work. And finally, a final cooperating teacher and friend, colleague, educator, professor, mentor, Army veteran, strong, wise, caring, thoughtful, kind, hardworking, and bibliophile of every genre. Distinguished faculty, yes. Distinguished all-around person, absolutely. So, your review is now complete. And the verdict is in, and I've done a nice guy, John. You gotta give me credit on this, okay? John, you have clearly qualified yourself in our eyes as a more than deserving recipient of a Distinguished Faculty Award. Your service to students, local teachers, and the colleges has been exemplary. There are few who have touched so many students at every level of education over so many years. Your legacy will continue to touch the lives of your students and their students and their students' students for many years to come. Personally, I'm proud to be one of those students. As with so many others, I never would have become the teacher in person I am today without your quiet nurturing and support. Thank you, John. You are the king. That's an inside joke. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay.
I love all the binder labels. This is just us. I love this. My name is Lindsay Brown. I'm from the class of 2005, and I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to honor John here today. The teachings of John, and let's face it, Midge, have informed how I move through this world as a teacher, a partner, and a parent. And I love, Paul, you mentioned the exact same three things. Like a well-seasoned educator who was fortunate to go through HWS's teacher education program and later the MAT, I knew I should tackle this speech as I would a lesson plan in my classroom. We'll start with a jump start, go full tilt into an exploration, and wrap it on up with some takeaways. My jump start. John has a sense of adventure like no other. At 65, he and Midge took 19 of us to New Zealand. They were fully immersed in our lives. There's no better way to demonstrate this other than to highlight it was John's idea that we bungee jump from the Kawerau Bridge in Queenstown on our 2-week trip to the South Island. To this day, I always incorporate a project with my students where they calculate how many rubber bands are needed to bungee jump a Beanie Baby off that bridge, without, of course, falling into the river below. Every year, I tell them the story of my professor, who at 65 bungee jumped with us in New Zealand. When most people are wrapping up their careers, scaling back on commitments, and looking to play it safe, John and Midge showed us youthfulness has nothing to do with age. They did everything with us: hiking, walking on glaciers, sea kayaking, speedboat racing. See that picture top? See what John's hair looks like? All spiked up. That's from the speedboat. Learning to perform hakas and playing kickball in the evenings. Imagine, we would pull into town in the evening, John and Midge would get the ball, get the teams sorted, and the game would commence. John was competitive and always up for an adventure. He brought the adventure because he is the adventure. Explore. On one particular day, we found ourselves on Cape Reinga at the Te Paki sand dunes. Bottom right. The mission was to take a boogie board down the very steep and very slick dune. It was shocking how fast you could get going, and most of us dropped our feet to govern our speed. Not John. John went full tilt. The sheer joy on his face was priceless. However, we lost sight of his smile when he crashed in the most spectacular yard sale. Out from the dust, clothing, shoes, remnants of John half buried, scorpioned in the sand, emerged the largest laugh and smile. We thought John had perished. But instead, he was laughing with immense joy at himself and at the situation. John was completely invested in our individual journey to becoming inspiring educators. Frequently visiting our classrooms, John and Midge praised our work and offered feedback that aligned closely with our daily classroom readings. He was the first to bring the famous works of W.E.B. Du Bois, John Dewey, and Paulo Freire to my attention. John and Midge challenged us to view our classrooms as more than sites of content delivery. Instead, they're arenas of empowerment, democracy, and social transformation. By embracing critical thinking, inclusivity, and active learning, John encouraged us to honor the full humanity of our students so that we may prepare them not just to succeed, but to lead and transform society. By investing in us, John was investing in thousands of students around the world. Takeaways. John's adventurous spirit, epitomized by bungee jumping at 65 and embracing every experience with his students, reminds us that great educators lead not only with intellect, but with joy, courage, and presence. His sand dune crash models humility, resilience, and the importance of finding laughter even in missteps, something every teacher, parent, and partner can aspire to. John saw teaching as a radical, transformative act. He grounded us in literature that inspired us to see our classroom as a place of empowerment and social change. John Burns has made me a better educator by showing me that teaching is not only about what I know, but about how boldly and joyfully and compassionately I will show up for my students. He has made me a better partner by modeling how a shared curiosity and laughter can strengthen any journey. And he has made me a better parent by reminding me to embrace adventure, celebrate failure, and lead with love. John doesn't just teach, he inspires transformation. And through all of us, his students, colleagues, and friends, his legacy of curiosity, justice, and joy continues to grow. Thank you, John, for all that you have given me, to us, and to generations to come. There are a few others who would like to say a few words, so if you can call your attention to the screen.
There were quite a few really great professors at HWS. There's one professor that stands out in my mind. Professor John Burns is that professor.
Oh, John, you've been an unsung hero for too long, and now the day has finally come for us to honor you for all your contributions to the colleges.
You were such a comfort to me when I was student teaching. You had such a calm way of making me feel confident and making me feel like I could do the important work that teachers do.
I just like to say how grateful I am for your commitment to education, your patience in understanding.
My senior year was difficult with my dad passing away during student teaching, and my family and I still talk about the fact that you were there for his services and were there for me.
I always remember you as being really patient, really kind, and very knowledgeable, and I can't think of a better person to receive the Distinguished Faculty Award, so congratulations.
It's my year 28, which I still can't believe, and I remember your lessons daily. Even dug out my student teaching journal and reflected on some of the things you had told, and you were right. Enjoy and congratulations.
It's hard to believe 44 years has passed since I graduated from Hobart. I still recall the times when I dropped into your office and you would patiently answer my questions on one thing or another.
Professor Burns, congratulations on your Distinguished Faculty Award. You deserve it.
Just again, congratulations so much. I'm sorry I can't be there in person to celebrate with you, but I'm so happy for you.
I learned so many amazing things, and all these children that benefit from all the things that you taught me.
Thank you, Professor Burns.
Thank you so much, and congratulations. This is a very well-deserved award.
Thank you, Professor Burns.
Professor Burns, congratulations.
Thank you. Say that. First, I want you to know I'm overwhelmed. I honestly didn't expect this. I asked Midge to come so there'd be somebody else here. I'm not kidding. And it's such an honor to me to share this venue today with Peter Cummings. I love Peter Cummings. I had lots of very good exchanges with Peter during my years here. A first-rate person, and Christine was one of my students. And in fact, the three people who spoke about Peter were all my students, good students, as you all have been. I say that, and I'm not lying. I'm not kidding. I really mean that. There's so many things I could say and I should say, but there's not time, and I cannot speak about every one of my former students because I would like to. The students have been a joy for me and for my teacher. This has been an adventure for me, Hobart and William Smith Colleges. It started a long time ago when I saw an ad on a bulletin board while I was at a convention in Chicago. They were looking for somebody, and I fit the bill. I knew I did. And I love liberal arts. I knew I had to have that job. So I applied. I came here, had a wonderful day interviewing. The best interviewing experience I ever had in my life, especially with the students. And I took the job, and Midge was more than a little supportive, by the way. She was very excited about it also. I'm going to tell you just one small anecdote. I could go on forever, and I know you don't want to hear them all anyway. But I was being interviewed by students in the afternoon of the day I spent here interviewing. And in the middle of this wonderful conversation I'm having with these young people, the phone rang. I was in Ed Cooney's office, by the way, and Ed had left. He left me in there with these hand-picked students. And so the phone's ringing. Somebody's got to answer it. So I answered it. And it was Jerry Cooney, Ed's wife, and I told her who I was and why I was here. And Jerry said, "Oh, you must be that very nice boy Ed was talking about from Syracuse." Well, there was a bit of a pause, and I said, well, I'm a very nice boy, but I'm not from Syracuse. I'm from Buffalo. And so there was a real palpable, embarrassed pause on both ends of the line. We finished with, I don't know, some small talk, and I went and finished the wonderful interview I had with those students. I got to tell you another thing that happened during that same day. Just before the interview with students, Ed was going to take me out to lunch. Well, I thought, hey, I'm going to see the best restaurant Geneva has. That's what you do. That's what you do. You impress the people who are coming in because you want them to be here as colleagues. So off I went with Ed, and Ed took me to a bar. Now, you can guess what the bar was. It was right on this campus. And I know everyone who's here today has been in that bar, I guarantee it. And I have to say, I walked through the door that day, and I was never more surprised. That bar was full of faculty and students enjoying each other's company. And it made a big impression on me. Anyway, those are some of the things that impressed me then, still do. I'd like to say more about the nature of this award because I think it's important. And I think it's important not because I stand here and I'm getting it. I think it's important because it says that the alumni and alumni and all former students at Hobart and William Smith Colleges think it's important to recognize a faculty of distinction. And this is a faculty of distinction, and they deserve to be recognized
as faculty of distinction. I'm here as only one of them. And I understand that. I have never been a rock star on this campus. I am here because former students feel faculty deserve recognition, and for that reason, I am very, very proud to be here representing them. And as I accept this award today, I want you to know I am accepting it on behalf of this distinguished faculty that has been so supportive of me. And I cannot ever be more grateful than I am to the students who taught me so much during my years here. They don't even understand that when I tell them that, but it's true. They taught me more than I can ever tell you. So I'm just going to wrap this up by saying thank you from everyone. I am humbled and I am honored.
Well, it is hard to top that, John. Thank you so much. Those words were beautifully said and just really centered us in the moment and the importance of it. And I agree with you very affirmatively that it says a lot about this place. It says a lot about our alums. It says certainly a lot about our faculty, past and present. So I totally agree with everything you said, with one exception. Right. Let us, with all due respect, Professor, and Professor Collins has prepared his review 4 of you to be elevated of this, the peer review that he provided. But usually those reviews go to my office to advance to the Board of Trustees. So with all of your concurrence, let us disagree with Professor Burns of not being a rock star today, right? I mean, here we are in the presence of a... So, thank you for that, and how grateful I am for that bulletin board in Chicago. And Lindsay said it beautifully in calling out in such an important way Midge Burns' presence on this campus. I don't know why we don't have a Distinguished Spouse Award, but I just invented it. And by the powers vested in me. But thank you so much for... This is such a wonderful event. It's my favorite event at Reunion because, as John beautifully said, it reinforces, reminds us, and inspires us of what's so special about this place, and that it's our faculty. The heart of any great academic institution rests in the academic program, the quality of the education, the lives of consequence that our mission allows for, that our students are prepared for. And none of that would have happened without the great faculty that we have today, and whose culture and traditions have inspired today's faculty. We're surrounded by great colleagues as I look here, for current faculty members and staff colleagues, reunioners that have come back. I was looking over there, I called them the Mount Rushmore. We have Jim Spates, Joe DeGangi, and Pat McGuire. We should carve that as our all DFA recipients with Alan Frischman. So what a great tradition, and how grateful we are to our alums for providing this. I'm grateful to Bill and Melissa. Thank you very much for organizing us here. I appreciate your red pants to remind me of home in Massachusetts. But y'all should know that Melissa's very talented daughter is the president of the student government here. So she's the real president around here. I make no confusion. But I'm sure with our current faculty members, our provost, Sarah Kirk, is here. We're also grateful to our returning alums. And certainly, two of them I knew as students. I've been around here so damn long. I've known Peter Cummings as a colleague, certainly John, our students that spoke. While Josh and I didn't intersect as students, I did meet him recently because we both have a house on Cape Cod. A couple summers ago, I was on Sunday morning in a t-shirt and shorts going to the dump, which in our town they dress up and call it the transfer station. It sounds much nicer than taking out the trash. So I was quietly trying to recycle and take out the trash, and all of a sudden I heard, President Guerin, President Guerin. So it's nice to see you back here again, so thanks. But thank you for your remarks. The emotion that so many of you exhibited beautifully spoke to the importance of the faculty in your lives. Paul, I loved when you said he left us. Peter left us with libraries of knowledge. And what a great testimonial that you provided to Peter's legacy here. And Josh saying the expertise in the working hand in hand with his demeanor. What a great framework for a great faculty member. So inspiration certainly for all of us going forward. And Christine, I think you rounded it out. Bringing your dad to life with his beautiful writings, his artistic achievement, and certainly his love of sports. And I remember talking to him about biking. I felt like a total schlep. Half his age and just pathetic, but an amazing colleague. Lindsay, it's so nice to have you back here. It's great to have you here. Although I have to say, John, that had I known, given liability laws and that you were bungee jiving, jumping with students, and you broke so many rules. Oh my God. The provost is wilting back there. We have no sense of humor today. They all survived, yeah. Scarred, I'm sure. But I think all of this to wrap, it just says to me what's special about this event is what's special about today's Hobart and William Smith, and that is what we frequently describe to prospective students and their families to describe, particularly at admissions events. How would you describe Hobart and William Smith? It's a question I get. And the honest answer, I think, is that it's a relationship-rich environment. The relationships our students enjoy with their faculty, with coaches, with alums, with their Geneva neighbors. It makes it quite unique and special during their all too brief 4 falls and 4 springs here in Geneva. And I think today's event certainly reinforced that. And it's a good reminder, I think, for all of us in a time when we're having to deliver on a return on investment or a quarterly report or in the moment assess, as we must do in education. But a good reminder is that sometimes that assessment transcends the quarter or the immediate to the arc of time that our graduates spoke so powerfully about. Reflecting back with lives, successful lives led, but coming back to campus on this reunion weekend to give testament and power to the impact of their faculty in all the different ways. So I am so grateful for the memory of Peter Cummings and the active engagement that both Peter and John had with me as a president arriving here in 1999. They were senior, scary members of the faculty to me. They taught me a lot. John served on important committees, and I learned a great deal from him. As a father of 2 daughters who went through all the Geneva public school system, I'm especially grateful for what both John and Midge have done for Geneva public schools. You made a difference, certainly for our family, for all Geneva families, by raising the bar, setting the standard, and really has led to the kind of programs and the engagement we have with today's Geneva school system. So what a fun, happy occasion. I thank the committee for bringing us together, for those that have nominated these worthy faculty colleagues, our alums that are back and who speak with such personal reflection. This is a special day. Congratulations to John and Christine. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for your own testimonial, and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thanks so much.
On behalf of the Hobart Alumni Association and the William Smith Alumni Association, specifically the DFA committee, we are delighted that you could all join us today. And I just want to mention, John, as you said, we know as the committee how wonderfully rich we are with the professors that we have on this campus. And so to have so many nominations and get to pick is so hard. And so congratulations to both you and Christine, to your dad, on this honor. We thank you for everything that you guys did for our community. Thank you to our speakers, to the families. And at this time, our presentation is concluded, but I welcome you all to stay, enjoy refreshments, take pictures, reminisce with each other. And for those who are interested, there are afternoon reunion events going on, such as the art opening at Houghton House. There are class gatherings going on later today. Please refer to the latest schedule, and thank you very much.